I had a very good month in March of scrapbooking. I attended a day crop and a 4-day retreat, and I got a lot of layouts completed. I also participated in the Creative Memories virtual crop, and I put on the accelerator for some of my scraps only layouts. This right here is not all of the layouts for the month. Some of them are already in the albums, but they will be in this video. And then some of them have videos coming, so I will put them in a later layout share once their videos have been posted. So let's look and see what I have accomplished in March. On this layout, I was once again playing around with the custom border templates, and I was cutting on the diagonal. I made this border with the Creative Memories Bears Border Maker cartridge. I have a single photo that was printed with the white mat already around it, so I really love that. And most of these stickers came from Echo Park. There's a video for this particular layout where I was playing around with the custom border template tools to make this nice wide border. I also used the Sunbeam frame punch, and I really like how that turned out to make a wide border here. And I was also trying to improve my clusters. And so I have these two clusters here that I'm patting myself on the back because for me, that's a big improvement in clusters. Overall, I really like this layout design that I came up with, so much so that I made a second layout. And this is pretty much the same layout. It's just using a single photo in the vertical position. But I used the same Sunbeam frame punch here. But I made a couple of changes to where I made the embellishment clusters just based on the difference in the photo arrangement. But I love this design. I really see myself repeating it a few more times. This layout was from the Next Big Thing YouTube Hop. I will be putting a link in the description of all of the layouts that have a video associated with them. And I used some Creative Memories papers and stickers here to just put this one 5x7 photo on the layout. I made this very large notched banner to be the mat holding the photo, and then I put a wide band across the center. I just love the way Creative Memories Christmas collections go together well year over year. Another thing that was different for me was having a black and white photo, but that's the way I received the photo from my niece. And I was very happy with the overall look of this and for using some of my Christmas collections because I always enjoy working with my Christmas papers and collections. And this 2-page layout was so much fun to make. I was playing around with my custom border tools. I made this large circle here, and I made part of it a journaling spot and part of it a base for clusters. And this was me moving forward on trying to use more paper from my 100 pattern papers challenge. This pattern paper here was one of those papers from a paper pad that had this hole here. And when you tried to cut the paper 12 inches, part of this hole would still be there. This is what happens when you cut your paper at 12 inches. So I cut the paper such that I welded it together here to cover up that seam. And that was my workaround for that problem with these papers. So I covered the seam with this paper. And what I did was I took this sheet, the green leafy paper, I cut out this wide border from it, and I took the center and put on my left side and covered up the weld when I put it on here. But I had a second sheet of this paper, and this time I just covered up the hole. I had 2 sheets of this paper, and then I used 1 sheet of the green leafy paper. So when I cut my 2 borders for the right side, I took the middle piece and made it a wide border on the left. Now that paper pad is one of those 100 pattern papers that I want to get used up, and having those holes in the paper presents a little bit of a challenge, but hey, I like a challenge. This layout was from the March 2026 virtual crop. So I was using the Wandering Wild collection, which was about outdoor, more sports-like hiking, etc. But I felt the colors just worked out well for pictures of the children outside in the park in the autumn. You can get a little faint hint of the change of the colors of the leaves, and the date shows it was October. So I thought this was a very cute layout to go in the children's album. This layout was also from the March 2026 virtual crop. It was one of the sketches, and I really like this. It's a great layout for having 3 horizontal photos. I was able to trim my photos down from 4x6 just enough to make this layout work. I made these borders with Creative Memories Border Maker cartridges, and the sketch called for some notched banners. Actually, I rotated the sketch 90 degrees. The sketch called for 3 photos that were in the vertical position, but the photos I had were these horizontal photos. So I adapted the sketch to meet my photos. And I found this little sticker from a very old stickers collection from back when somebody had licensed some SeaWorld stickers. So I was very happy to get one of them used on a layout. I also matted the frame and put it on bright white cardstock. But the reason that I chose the white cardstock was because I was at the day crop and I wanted to make as many of the virtual crop sketches as I could during that short window. But choosing papers was something I wanted to kind of rush. And so this is what I came up with. But overall, I really liked how it turned out. This is a layout I made while at the retreat, and I used the Epic Adventure paper pack for the main background paper. When I saw this paper in the Epic Adventures collection, I knew exactly which photos I wanted to use. These are pictures from a visit from 2004 I made to the Stephen F. Udzvar Hazy Center, which is a part of the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. It is near Dulles Airport out in the Fairfax County, Virginia area. But this layout is just a commemoration of that visit. And I've been trying to get some of these older photos scrapbooked. And so I just really liked that I could use this busy paper and come out with a nice layout that I really liked. And at the time I'm recording this, the Artemis crew has just returned home, and I just want to give them a big pat on the back and a big applause for their amazing accomplishment. And I'm so thrilled of their safe return. I made this layout at the retreat, and it was just a lot of fun. I played around with the whale tail border punch, which is one of my favorites. And I also used the drops and flames punch to just take some of my tiny little scraps and throw a few little droplets here and to use this space at the bottom of the page. One thing that I've learned about whales and orca is that each one of them have a unique, distinctive pattern on their flukes, and it's almost like a fingerprint. So I took a white gel pen and played around with these. Now, because these pictures are of orca, I punched this in black, even though the majority of the page and the background paper is navy blue. But I wanted to be kind of true to the orca themselves. And I just love that whale tail border punch. When I bought it, I wasn't expecting to use it as much or love it as much as I do. Another thing that I did is I put a peekaboo pocket on this page. So when it goes in the album, it's going to have a peekaboo pocket like this. And just to give you a close up of the pictures, it's the orca splashing the crowd in the audience. I made this layout during the retreat, and it's just photos of my trip to SeaWorld and the Leaping Dolphin shows. I tried to focus on all of these pictures are where the dolphins are synchronously performing. And this is where I came up with this border. And I made a video on this border, and I'll have a link to it as well. I used the Dolphins Border Maker cartridge. I made some punch out with the dolphins. That is a punch that gives you a straight edge. But my secret was to give the paper this wavy edge before I put it into the Border Maker system. And I also used the Scallop Bubbles punch. I took the punch out of the dolphins and put them on foam dots. And then I cut some other gray dolphins and filled in the spots here. And I also covered up these little wave crest shapes with putting some white backing behind them. In the video, I think I just extended the whole border so the white from the scallop bubbles comes down below all of this. I put a big block mat here, and I extended the mat over to the left-hand side a bit because I like that look when you have a two-page layout and you want it to look like it's flowing from left to right smoothly. This is definitely one of my favorite borders, and it might show up again. This layout represents me getting outside of my comfort zone, but I'm really happy with it. I made this layout while I was at the retreat, and I just had a lot of fun. This is from the Epic Adventure paper collection from Creative Memories. And I'll be honest, when I saw this paper, I was baffled at how and when I would ever use it. But when I started looking at these photos that I took at Universal Studios Orlando, and I saw the photos were the villains and the heroes, I went, this is the perfect paper, but it can get overwhelming. So what I did was I took the sheet I had, cut it in half, and made a band across the middle of the 2 pages. Then I made sure I matted each one of the photos to lift them off the page. And I was able to use a couple of the embellishments that came with the collection. And while I was at the retreat, I used the film strip border maker cartridge. I don't have that cartridge, but I really did like it. I only had enough to make one border with it, so I divided it up. I used it here to make a base for this little embellishment cluster. And then I took what I had and I split it down the middle to be a little bit of an embellishment here and here. And for me, it worked. It looks a little busy. The photos are busy. Now, this red background tone on tone paper was part of the collection, and it was just right to tone down the busyness in this paper and the photos, and at the same time, keep the mood and feel of the overall layout. This layout was a base page that I made during a retreat last fall. It was a class that we took where we made this layout that used a strip of this dark green here, which I embossed playing around with the new Creative Memories die cutting machine. We used this notebook edge punch here and here and the lined paper, so it came with a journaling spot already built in. And then I added some photos as I was working on my document December, and I just felt the colors were right. I like this color scheme. It is not your traditional Christmassy red and green. It's a bit of an orchid color and green, and I thought it went well with my photos. On this side, you have the gray tones with a little bit of green peeking through. And as my document December pages are most often a collage of a variety of things in each layout, I'm glad that I was able to put my photos on the page without them clashing. And when it comes to colors, that's my focus. It's not to match, it's to not clash. Overall, I was happy to both use this base page and make some progress on my documenting December. These pages were also layouts that I made during my Document December series. And as I got my photos printed, what emerged and what I liked best to use this particular layout for were documenting my reading on this page and documenting significant TV shows and movies that we watched in December. And I'm very happy with how these turned out. I'm very happy that I used the pages I made, even though they didn't turn out quite like I thought they would when I made them in advance. I made this layout at a retreat where I had access to a border maker cartridge of these cupcakes. I also pulled from, I think it was called Sunny Days, and these were actually sunshine, but I took some of my pattern paper and cut circles and covered the little sun faces, and now they just became decorative elements. I used the gum leaf punch to enhance the elements, and the paper I used was a piece from Berry Harvest, and then this was from the Gradient collection that came out in 2025. I love this layout. If you watched my photo sorting series, you may have watched when I pulled out these photos and this paper kit to make this layout. This paper is from a simple page kit, but I used it differently. This is the back. There were 2 sheets of paper just like this one, and there was a third sheet that you would cut apart and put the pieces on this paper to create a 2-page layout. But I chose something different. The back side of the paper had the flamingos as a all-around design. And I cut apart this piece and this piece, and I redesigned the paper, putting the pink here in the center and splitting the green piece and putting some here and some up here. Meanwhile, the entire background was the flamingos all the way around. So I used both of the background papers to make this layout, and I still have remaining the cut apart paper, which is quite pretty. Leave me a comment if you would like me to make a video on what I did with the leftovers from this kit. But I really love this. I love this paper. Meanwhile, I used other collections like Tropic Time and, of course, the stickers that came with this kit to make a couple of embellishment clusters here. I had a blast cutting apart that simple page kit and making something entirely different. And if you would like for me to make some on video where I cut apart a simple page kit and make something entirely different, please leave a comment. This layout I made during the retreat, and it was a fun layout to make. The paper used was called Glacier Frolic, and it, along with this penguin punch, came in a special last December 2025. And I knew the minute I saw it what photos I wanted to use. The icicles were made using a Boilermaker cartridge called Icicle Chain, and I cut it in white shimmer paper, and I thought it just made the perfect layout. This layout is actually quite simple. This is a layout where I just reused some of my favorite techniques. I have a video where I make the frames that I put on the sides. At its core, this is a simple layout. I used a grid style to put my photos on, and I used this dolphin punch, and I repeated the technique where before cutting the dolphins with the Boilermaker cartridge, I cut my paper with the wave blade to give it a little scallop here instead of just the flat edge. Now these 2 pages are among several layouts that I've made regarding SeaWorld, And so the need for journaling and titles isn't really necessary because I have several pages on this subject. And because of the uniqueness that was going on in these photos, I don't see a need to add anything more that I've put on other pages in the same album. But I didn't want to lose these. And I think that overall, it made a really pretty layout. This is one of the few month in review layouts I made during the month of March. I took mainly one sheet of paper. I cut this large block and put my photos in a grid style on the block. I also took that paper and made this border. And then I took the jumbo circle cutter by Creative Memories. I made the mat for this, and then I took a piece of paper, cut another circle, and made a journaling spot for this. So overall, it's a very simple layout. Just the border mat, a punch, and a circular journaling spot. This layout has a video, and I was playing around with the custom cutting tools and the new shapes that recently came out. I just made two borders for the left and the right, and I placed my photos on two blocks of paper on the left and the right. I used a minimal amount of decorative elements, and because I have other photos telling the same story, I don't see a need for adding a whole lot more embellishment to the page, although I may. Overall, when you break this layout down, it's just a border and a block. I wanted to make this a two-page layout because I did not want to crowd my photos. This is telling an important story, which I'm going to write here, and I wanted the space for the photos. And this layout is a case where seeing the photo invokes some wonderful memories. These dancers were singing and performing, and I can still hear that beautiful melody in my head every time I look at the photos. And that's what makes scrapbooking so meaningful to me, is because I'm reliving these wonderful special moments. This layout is one of my favorites. It has a video. I'll link to it above. And it was from the Next Big Thing YouTube hop for the month of April. And I made this wavy border here, but instead of using the custom templates, I actually used one of the recipe templates to come up with a different shape. I love playing around with various shapes. I used the Bears Border Maker cartridge to make this chain, and the new Tiny Footprints punch that has come out from Creative Memories, and the date punch that recently came out as well. I used the Jumbo Custom Cutting Circle to cut this ring, and it was cut with the remnants of this paper that I used to make a mat for the photograph. This layout was one of my scraps only layouts. In March, we were given our deadline for completing our scraps only challenge. And that challenge was to make enough layouts to fill an album using only scrap paper. And I really loved how this one turned out. And this layout showed up in April in the Creative Memories virtual crop, sketch number 1. And I'm like, okay, Sandy, are you watching? If you are, I'm flattered. Now, by no means is this a design that I came up with completely by myself. I'm sure I was inspired by other layouts I've seen around. And so I'm not trying to claim it as my own, but I am thinking it was quite coincidental. We got a laugh. A few of my friends who saw my video got a laugh when we saw the sketch. Here's another layout that was from the Scraps Only Challenge. In this layout, I had some strips of paper here and here, and this yellow was a paper that had a large circle cut from it in the middle. And so I was attempting to cover that large hole with this layout. And I feel that I successfully achieved my goal in that. And I also achieved the goal in using scrap papers and reducing my collection of scraps. This layout was made for my 2025 month in review album, and I made it using only scraps. It does not have a video because I made it while I was at the retreat. But I was also able to use some punches that I didn't have. This Border Maker cartridge was one that I had at the retreat. And so was this one. I pulled in some stickers from Coastal Shores, and I also cut out this circle from this paper, but behind where this mat is located. So it's just these two photos. Because I think the mat was around 8 inches wide, I had enough room to punch an edge, which I think really brought out this layout. And it's just about Hub and I enjoying a meal at our favorite seafood restaurant. I made this whole layout with one single sheet of paper. I cut out this shape with the custom cutting tool arch template. And then I welded it back together to form this layout. I also used some vellum for some of the embellishments, and I put a single photo here in the center. So this layout illustrates that when you're down to that very last sheet of paper, you can still make something beautiful with it. This layout is definitely one of my favorites for the month. I used the new Spring Equinox paper collection from Creative Memories, along with their new punches called Spring Blooms and a Border Maker cartridge that had the smile on it, as well as the fall release of a punch called Chrysanthemums. This was a Border Maker cartridge called Starry. It was an older one that is discontinued, but I just love the fun nature. I love the colors, and as you know, I can have my monochromatic fever from time to time, and so this really took me away from being monochromatic. I made this layout during the retreat. And this background paper is the type that just does all the work for you on a layout. I just took 2 photos that I took from a plane ride. I used this airplane punch, which is discontinued from Creative Memories. And I used the cloud frame punch, which is also discontinued from Creative Memories. I just cut a rectangle. I used the cloud punch. I inked around the edges, putting a little halo effect on it. And I put the title Going Home and what it felt like to be going home after the trip that I was taking this flight from. This is the type of layout that is the reason I scrapbook, because whenever I see this page, it evokes the feelings I had because we were finally going home after a trip that had some interesting setbacks. And the good feeling of lifting off the ground, knowing that you're on the way home, just comes back to me every time I see these pictures. And that's one reason I scrapbook, because I like those memories. I hope that these layouts have inspired you. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. If you would like to see me recreate some of the layouts that don't currently have videos, please also let me know that. And I hope you have a fine day. And YouTube says, here's another video that you may like, and I hope you'll watch it also.